Hello! It is I, once again, Brianna, for this week's Kitchen Chemistry. I know it's a shocker. Welcome to week 11? Question mark? Not really sure where the time went, but welcome to week 11. We're getting towards the end of the summer. A little bit crazy. Camps are wrapping up soon. Wild and crazy times. I'm really happy today because I'm not going to sweat in my kitchen because it's cloudy. So, that's exciting for me, but I'm also just excited to be here with you folks, making some food in the kitchen and learning all about some stuff. So, today I have decided to return to the classics. And I do not mean classic experiments. We've done some of those. We'll do some experiments again. Don't you worry. But I wanted to return to a classic recipe that everyone has their own version for, everyone knows and loves. Today, I'm going to introduce you to mine. Today, we are going to make chocolate chip cookies. Now, you may be going, Anna, I already know how to make chocolate chip cookies. I use my great-grandma Elsie's recipe from, that she got in the war, and, Maybe you've got your own recipe. That's fine. Use your recipe. But I am going to use chocolate chip cookies today as a vehicle for learning about some sweet food science. Because there's a lot packed in those little cookies. No matter what recipe you used, all of the same kind of concepts apply. So we're going to make my recipe today. Follow along with me. Maybe you'll learn some things. Maybe you'll just judge me for my inferior cookie recipe to you. I think mine's pretty good. But we shall see. So let's just do a little desk cam. So I'm just going to hold stuff up because there's a lot of stuff going on. Chocolate chips. We've got brown sugar. Now I'll show you. We got brown sugar. We got some white sugar. Don't need that much. We have baking soda, butter, and normally I use dairy-free, because I'm lactose intolerant. But today I will be sacrificing myself for the goodness of real butter. You will see why in a second. Muy importante. We've got some eggs. I've got flour in this tub over here. We're using gluten-free so that my dad can eat them because these are his favorite. Got salt. Actually, I have 2 different kinds of salt because I'm a goblin, which I will explain as we go. We're going to not do too much talking right off the bat because that's boring. I'm going to make, bake, and explain. Are we ready? So, also vanilla, obviously. So let's get going. First thing we are going to do, and it seems a little counterintuitive. We're going to take some butter and we are going to add it to a pot. Well, first thing I did actually, correction, back in. Preheated my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Important. Second step is I have a nice large saucepan. You want a large one because you want more surface area along the bottom. You want more contact with what we are going to add into it. What we are going to add into is some butter today. The recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of butter. We are going to put 1/2 cup of butter into that pot and reserve the 1/4 cup. So, I don't need even to get out measuring spoons for this because someone, I don't know who, if you know, tell me, decided that when we were going to have butter in sticks, like good Canadians, they were going to put the little measurements on the butter. Which that person, whoever decided that, is my hero, and they are near and dear to my heart. Don't know who they are, though. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take a semi-sharp knife, and I'm going to cut up a cup of butter. My butter is a little bit squashed. It has seen better days, but what's the thing in my fridge have? I'm going to just cut it straight off the rest of the butter, because butter, it's amazing. Butter, what can't it do? And I'm going to toss it in this pot. My brother is going to sneak around behind it to go to the compost. We will see if he gets in the frame. He successfully didn't get in the frame. I'm very proud of him. So that butter is in the pot. Whoop! So first, I'm also going to take off those little bits of the wrapper because nobody needs that in their gullet. Butter surgery. Definitely something you didn't think you were going to be watching today. But here we are. So, butter, melt in my hands, in that pot. Rinse in the hands. This is what we do 8,000 times in kitchen chemistry. So what am I doing, pray tell, with this butter? I'm going to put it on medium-high heat on my stove, and it's going to hang out for like minimum 5 minutes, maximum 10. I'm going to show you as we do it what's going to happen. If you know what's going to happen, don't spoil it. If you don't, we'll see. So popping that on the element, medium-high heat with my dorky stove. So that's going to be melting away. So can't really do any of the other steps. It's good to have your quarter cup of butter ready. So you are going to mix that all together in a moment. You want something to stir the butter with, something heat-proof that's not going to transfer the heat to your hands because we don't want any burns here. So I'm going to use a whisk. So that can hang up for a second. So why am I adding butter to a pot? Well, this is a good question. So butter is a milk product, a dairy product, gifted to us from cows. Not really gifted. They don't really have a lot of say in the matter. Buy ethically sourced butter and dairy products and meat, eggs. I'm done. Butter. How do we get butter? Well, we take cream and we shake the living snot out of it, is the short version. If you've ever seen a nice Pilgrim movie, you know they have those butter churners. Kind of looks like someone is operating a weird giant toilet plunger. They kind of undulate it up and down. By undulating it and sort of agitating it, it's probably a better word. By agitating it, they're mixing it up and they're mixing the different molecules together. Because this milk right here, this milk is a homogeneous mixture, but it's not all made of the same things. There's water in here. There's actually a lot of water in here. So when we mix up this milk, which I'm not going to do because I need the milk to have milk, when we mix it up, we start mixing all these different homogenized, well-mixed molecules together and bumping them together. So what does that mean? Well, if we remember a couple weeks ago, I talked to you folks about hydrophobic, hydrophilic, water-fearing, water-loving. And we talked about how things like fat are hydrophobic. And I already just said there is water in milk. That is the liquid part. So it makes it a liquid. There's also fat in milk. Not in skim like I had, but if you have like heavy cream, higher fat content. Skim, lowest fat content. Everything else between that, like 2% of your 2% milk, that means it is 2% fat. By agitating it, by mixing it around, these fat molecules start bumping together. And they want to bump together because now they have one side that's not touching the water. And they're like, oh, sweet. So then they bump into another friend. And they're like, okay. They all start globbing together. It's like they're at a party. You're at a party. You don't know anybody. And people are maybe people start dancing. So you start dancing even though you don't really want to because you don't know anyone. But then you see your friend in the crowd. So you start dancing up to them. And then you see a friend. And you're like, oh, thank goodness. I have a friend. I don't need to be social with people I don't know. So you're dancing with your friend. Sweet. Then you see your other buddy. And you're like, oh, sweet. So you both run over there. And eventually you all start globbing your friend groups together. Like fat and water. So the more we shake up our milk, the more these fat molecules are able to glob together. And that, my friends, is how we get butter. So butter is just these compounds globbed together. It's just this fat and also protein. Just like we talked about amino acids have a hydrophobic end. They also glob together, along with some sugars. But mostly we are left with fat and protein. That's what butter is. So, which is why we can't use dairy-free butter for this. Why, pray tell? Because dairy-free butter, or vegan butter, margarine that doesn't have any dairy in it, whatever you want to call it, is just fat. It's just like different combinations of different oils and stuff like that. Often they're hydrogenated, which means the molecules have more hydrogens added to them, which makes them more solid. And they don't have any of that protein in it. So we can't have something important happen. So, again, to get back to this, why am I heating up this butter? Well, last week we talked about the Maillard reaction, which is one of the most important reactions, chemical reactions that happens to food. It's what makes food taste better. It's why some people don't like raw vegetables, but if you roast a bunch of vegetables and they're like chef's kiss, good, that is why. I'm turning down the butter because I can hear it. You want to give it, when you're doing this butter, you want to give it some periodic stirring, but don't fuss too much about it because it happens slower than you expect. But you're just going to stir it so it doesn't burn. What is happening right now is there are sugars, fats, and proteins interacting. We are melting the fats, makes it a liquid. We're adding energy into the system, and we are adding heat. The Maillard reaction is a reaction between sugars and protein that is kind of catalyzed, which is sped up by heat. So by having this happen, by adding our butter to that pot there and applying heat, we are causing the Maillard reaction to happen. And it would happen with the cookies themselves. This is something that's going to happen with our cookies. That's why they get like a nice golden brown color. But if you do it to the butter beforehand, it adds way more flavor to your cookies. Because, just what we said last time, that combination of sugar, protein, and heat creates a bunch of new aroma compounds. So instead of just tasting sweet or salty, we're going to have a bunch of new molecules that can get up in your nose, get detected by your olfactory bulb, end up in your brain, and then it's like, darn, dang, really good cookie. That's what we want. So, stirring again. So, your butter is going to foam. That is okay. This is why we stir. We want to keep stirring so that we can disturb the foam so we can see the color underneath. Now, we are going to keep cooking this until it darkens up, which makes sense. We're making more of those dark brown aromatic compounds. That's what we want. Until it smells good. Because it's going to go from smelling like a greasy movie theater, that melted butter smell, to like a good kind of nutty, kind of almost caramely smell. And that is the Maillard reaction happening. So I'm just going to keep stirring it and hanging out and stirring it until we get that nice, tasty, extra good butter. So I'm going to start again. And believe me, I'm going to show you what it looks like. Right now, it's just sizzling away, which is fine. You don't have to keep as close an eye on it as you do with things when you're cooking milk, because it's less likely to curdle. So don't worry too much about it. So let's get our next thing sorted. So let's get that 1/4 cup of butter set up. That's going to get added to our browned butter, which we're going to add to this nice big bowl. Great thing about this recipe, it's one bowl and a pot and a pan, but that's fine. It's not like you have 8,000 little tiny bowls. The reason I don't do these on plastic is because I hate doing dishes. Get those little doodad bits off. Give this bad boy a stir. It's starting to take on color, which is fabulous. Also part of the reason we want a bigger pot, more surface area at the bottom, more contact the butter has with the heat, faster it goes. Use a small pot, doesn't really matter. Use Dutch oven. It's just going to take a different amount of time. So, 1/4 cup of butter, measured with the magical measurements from the person who is my hero. Okay, 1/4 cup of butter. Peel it. Peel your butter. Heavy sigh from my brother there. Make sure you got no crud in it. No crud. We don't want no crud. There we go. We're adding that to our pan. Giving it another stir. Okay. It's happy, it's sizzling away. We don't need any more butter, so it's going back in the fridge. So, what else are we adding to these chocolate chip cookies today? Well, we are at other things. Actually, what else are we adding that has the Maillard reaction happening? We already said Maillard reaction is going to happen with the butter. There's sugar involved. A lot of sugar involved. We're going to have a cup of brown sugar and a 1/4 cup of white sugar. That's going to contribute to our Maillard reaction. We have eggs going in here, protein, and we also have sugar going in here. Sure. that helps. That helps have Maillard reactions happening. We're also adding chocolate chips. Use whatever chocolate you like. Some people like milk chocolate. Some people like dark chocolate. Some people like using like flat, like discs of chocolate in their cookies. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Chocolate. All chocolate's good chocolate. Chocolate. Chocolate also involves the Maillard reaction, both mainly in its production, because we don't just take cocoa beans, grind them, and immediately get cocoa. Cocoa beans grow on a tree. They're whack. They don't really grow in stems. They grow like straight off the tree, like a weird, delicious growth. We get the beans out of there. We separate out the cocoa butter, like the pulpy stuff that's in the cocoa pod, and the seeds, beans, whatever you want to call them. And we roast the beans. Why do we roast the beans? Maillard reaction. Exactly. It's because of the Maillard reaction. It is going to help make those more complex aroma compounds. And depending on how the chocolate is roasted will actually impact the flavor, depending on the temperature, depending on the time that it's roasted, depending on what you roast it with. All of these things are going to impact the Maillard reaction. And again, every time it happens, it is a unique reaction. There's only so much you can control with these molecules because you're not individually like connecting them. Let's throw the butter. It's starting to get there. Slowly but surely. So that is why you can have a bunch of different kinds of milk chocolate that may be all of the same ingredients, but can still taste different and can be of different qualities because of how complex the compounds develop during the Maillard reaction. So, wafting a wasp away from me. So chocolate, very important, and a lot of different companies have their own like patented. This is how we roast it. Other things that work very similarly is coffee. Coffee beans are harvested, they're roasted, and that is why like everyone has a different roast. I like blonde roast. I'm blonde. I don't want bitter things in my mouth. That is coffee that's roasted less. That is less of those complex Maillard reaction aroma compounds develop. Coffee that's roasted for a long time has more of them, which is why it's darker. That's why it's called dark roast or light roast, is because the longer you're going to roast it for, the more Maillard reaction you have happening, the more color it's going to take on. Pretty much everything that you cook, to some degree, has this Maillard reaction happening. I digress. That's the history of chocolate. So lots more things I could tell you about chocolate, but right now we're focusing on the Maillard reaction. Maybe we'll do more on chocolate at a later date. Other things we're adding: flour. Flour, again, just like our sourdough bread, also has sugars, also has proteins in it. So it's going to have a different amount of that Maillard reaction happening depending on the blend. That's why I also always like using whole wheat, is because it's got more protein in it, so it has more of that complex Maillard reaction goodness. Let's start. Oh, yeah. Yep. You can often tell it's starting to get done when it stops sizzling. So this has been going for about 10 minutes, maybe close to 15. Actually see, it's probably good enough. Actually see, that'd be a tricky shot. Oh yeah, there we go. I stir this up. You can see, and even you can see that collecting the bottom, those tasty, delicious brown bits. Technically, those are called fond. So if you ever you're cooking something in a pot and you have to add liquid, that is because you want to collect the fond, sure those Maillard reaction, good tasty bits into your mixture. So this butter smells nutty. It smells caramely, like butterscotch scents. It smells pretty darn good. So I'm gonna add this hot, browned, delicious butter to my cold butter. Cold room temperature, doesn't matter. Slowly. You don't want it to splash and you don't want it to sizzle too much. So we don't want to hurt ourselves. Ooh. Actually see in the pot right now. Sorry, pour it slow. You can see all those delicious Maillard reaction bits. We are going to use a spatula. So get all the old trusty rubber spatula out. Again, I own 1,000 of them. Get them at the dollar store. Buy in bulk. And I'm going to scrape all those tasty bits out because we are not spending all that time browning our butter where we could be doing plenty of other things like not working. And you want to make sure we get those in our pot. So, we want to get all those brown bits out. We are pretty much done with our whisk. We're going to put that to the side into the sink it goes. So, now we are going to kind of gently spray butter all over everything on live YouTube. We are going to gently stir our butter around so that it can start melting into the rest of the butter. So I'm just going to gently agitate it. Wipe off the butter that's all over everywhere. I think there's some on my leg. Story time. First time I made a cake semi-unsupervised was the 5th grade. Ballsy on my mother's part. And I got butter on our 15-foot ceilings. So there's a greasy mark on the ceiling right above me. You can see it at the right time of day. I know my brother's looking for it. You can see it sometimes. That was fun to explain. So always add things slowly, even if I don't. So we are stirring, we are melting our butter. We're getting it incorporated, but we don't want it to cook too much. So next we are going to add our sugar along with our, actually, you know what? I want my whisk back. Just utilize the whisk. Yeah, that's better. So we're going to stir this up until all of our cold butter that we added is melted. Because we want it nice and uniform. Happen reasonably quickly. It's not the biggest deal. And if it's not perfectly melted, if you just have little clumps before you add the sugar, that's fine too. This already smells delicious. Just a heads up. Just in case you're wondering. The day they invent smell-o-vision, I'm going to be very happy. So, we're adding a cup of brown sugar to this recipe. Dark is preferable, but again, no pressure. Use whatever you have at home. Now, what is actually the difference between brown and white sugar, you may be asking? Good question. So sugar comes from sugarcane, and there's a lot of different byproducts of sugar. Molasses and white sugar come from the same source. They are both different products that we can get from that reaction. So when we take sugarcane that's processed, it is kind of ground up and slowly filtered out. And the more filtered it is, the purer you get it and the more light colored it is. That's why we have white sugar. Brown sugar has a little bit of that crud left in it. And I say crud with the most amount of fondness in my heart because I think brown sugar is the best. Because it's just got more flavor because it has more of those complex irregular molecules that we just can't control. That's what makes it taste good. My hands need away. So molasses is one of the first byproducts of that reaction. It's one of the first things that comes out of when you process sugar. So that is, it's got that really dark color, it's a more deep, complex flavor. Whereas white sugar, it's kind of just tastes like sweet because it's just the sugar. Whereas brown sugar has a little bit of that molasses goodness left in it, which I really like. I think it is chef's kiss delicious. There's going to be a slogan for kitchen chemistry. I think it's chef kiss delicious. Just stirring that up so it's reasonably incorporated. Adding a 1/4 cup of white sugar. Probably, I haven't tried it. You could probably use all brown sugar. You could probably use all white sugar or a different amount of each depending on your preference. I'm just doing what the recipe tells me. I'm a good chef. But that brown sugar tape really adds a lot to chocolate chip cookies because it's that kind of quintessential mix between chocolate and then also this like caramelized taste to a chocolate chip cookie that I love. And that we achieve that through the brown sugar. And we're just going to augment that by browning our butter. So now I've incorporated 1 cup of brown sugar and 1/4 cup of white sugar. And I'm going to add the rest of our liquids. So we are going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Again, augment that kind of caramely, dark, toasty flavor. By 2 teaspoons, I mean I'm going to eyeball it. I added about 2 teaspoons. You can see what it looks like right now. Beautiful, dark, mysterious, delicious, caramelized flavors up in here. So again, it's pretty dark. That is actually what you want. Stir that in. Next, we're going to add 2 eggs. Technically, the recipe says to add 2 eggs, or 1 egg and 2 egg yolks. I don't want to separate a bunch of eggs because I'm making chocolate chip cookies and I want to eat them as fast as possible. And also, I only have 2 eggs in my house right now because I accidentally ate one for lunch. So instead of doing 1 egg and 2 egg yolks, we're just going to add 2 eggs. And it's going to be fine because chocolate and sugar, how can you go wrong? Chocolate, sugar, butter, salt. So our 2 eggs are going in. I recommend adding them 1 at a time. And then beat well after each addition. This will lighten things up a little bit. So the eggs in this case, unlike our meringues that we made previously, are not added to as a leavener. So they're not added to add air to our mixture to make them lighter. Kind of just added for structure and to augment that Maillard reaction goodness. So by structure, I mean we mix up the eggs, but they do, like the proteins do unfold, they do cook. So it gives us structure without tasting like scrambled egg. Stirring my 2nd egg in there. Give it a good whisk. You want it all incorporated. Now, all we need to do now is add our dry ingredients. Pretty straightforward. So we are going to add 1.5 cup of flour. You could use whole wheat. You could use all-purpose. You could use pastry flour, whatever fruits you lose. I'm using gluten-free, just to show that it works either way. You don't need to use any fancy replacements. And I'm not even using a fancy blend of gluten-free flour. I'm using some I bought on Amazon. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. Scoop it up. I would like to level off my flour, but I'm not super picky about it. What I kind of do is scoop it, and then I scoop it and then press it on the side. And that way I don't have to hum and haw about making sure it is level. Again, we are not pro bakers here. I am certainly not a professional baker. I'm just baking on the internet for funsies because my work lets me. But we're not trying to win any awards here. Just level off best you can. So we're going to add 1.5 cups. So I have a 1/2 cup measure. Then I'm going to measure it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Put that back in its container. Now it's dry ingredients so that you don't overmix everything because that can make things tough. It activates the gluten, just like how we wanted to knead our bread a lot to activate the gluten because it gives our bread structure. You don't have to do that to cookies because then you end up with hard, sad cookies. So you want to just fold it gently. Next, we're going to add an amount of baking soda that I need to double check on. How much baking soda am I adding? 3/4 teaspoon. So, measuring and I'm measuring out baking soda. Now, pause. What is baking soda? Good old Arm & Hammer. Baking soda, or bicarbonate of soda, or sodium bicarbonate, sorry, is a base. It's just a powdered mineral base. So this alkaline, turn cabbage indicator teal, just like we used it earlier in the summer. And it acts as a leaven. How does it do that, you ask? Well, when we add it to something acidic, it produces carbon dioxide gas. So we can, when that gas is formulated, made, produced by this reaction, it makes this gas, but the cookies are also being baked when this happens. So that gas gets actually trapped in the cookies and gives them a little bit of airiness. But we're not really adding any direct acids to this. It's not like I'm going to throw lemon juice in here or vinegar. We're not making something airy like a cake. So it doesn't have a lot of leavening powers in this case, but it does keep you from having a dense, flat, sad cookie. even happy cookies. What I'm going to also add is I'm going to add a liberal amount of salt. Why salt? Why do we add salt to baking? Is it just because salt is good? But cookies aren't salty. Important questions. So, when we taste with our tongue and our nose. Complex flavors, like our Maillard reaction flavors, or scents, are interpreted by our nose and our brain. They're not interpreted by our tongue, but our tongue has specialized receptors for like our core tastes. So we got our sour, we got our sweet, we got our salty, we got our bitter, and we got our umami, which is your savory. Salt normally tastes salty on our tongue, granted. We were just adding a little bit of it. And what it actually does is sodium. So we have our sodium chloride, that's your table salt. Sodium ions actually block and bind to bitter compounds. So you don't taste bitter as much when things are salty. That's why historically people used things like lots of salt to cover up bad food. Gross. But it's why it was used. So adding salt in this case will actually make things taste sweeter, not because we're making the sugar taste sweeter, but because we're making your tongue taste less bitter in comparison, which makes things taste sweeter. It's kind of weird. But if you ever add like flaky sea salt to watermelon, you'll know what I'm talking about because it's out of this world good. So now we are going to gently fold all of our dry ingredients, that was our flour, baking soda, and our salt, into our batter. And when it says fold, this is that's the key word where you want to switch your whisk for a spatula. So, and by fold, I scoop around the sides, not like in Sleeping Beauty where she says, fold 2 eggs. And she just adds them in the shell and starts folding them like she's folding laundry. It's going to start out a little powdery, but with a little bit of love, it'll get there. Stirring, stirring. Whoops! I'm not a clean cook. I guess that wasn't already apparent. Now, this is something I like to do before things have fully popped off. Things are still, we can still see there's dry bits. We're starting to see that like that is what our cookie dough is going to look like, but there's starting to be dry bits. This is where I like to add our chocolate chips. A lot of recipes will say like mix and add it at the end, but secret, is I always add mix-ins to cakes, to brownies, to cookies, whatever you're baking. If you're mixing something in, nuts, some kind of chocolate chip, fruit, whatever, coat it in flour first. Because as it cooks, that flour is also going to cook along with it and hold it like an anchor into your baked good. Otherwise, gravity is going to pull those little suckers straight to the bottom and they're going to burn and be sad. So before everything is fully mixed with like muffins and stuff, blueberry muffins, I always add it when things are still a little bit floury, powdery, to help keep our chocolate chips in the mix. That's the kind of thing that gets you eliminated at the start of Great British Bake Off or Great Canadian Bake Off. Now, my chocolate chips for this recipe were told to be measured in ounces. Could I have gone down to the kitchen scale? Yes. Am I just going to follow my heart and add the amount of chocolate chips that I feel are necessary? Yes. You can add whatever amount. It's not going to change anything. It's just going to change the amount of chocolate in it. It's not going to change the composition of your cookie. If you add too many, you're just going to have more chocolate chips than batter, and that's going to be weird. But like, live your best life. I'm just going to add chocolate chips till I think it looks good. So, we eyeball. This is one of those things it's appropriate to eyeball. I'm going to add that much. And then we're going to fold, and then we're going to see. So you can see I'm kind of stirring it in the flour, making them a little powdery. That's going to keep them from being burnt and sad. It's different. Key difference between Maillard reaction and burnt. So I'm already seeing, I want a little more chocolate chips. The mini chocolate chips, so I want a little more oomph. I want a little bit more. I'm going to pour some in my hand. I'm going to pour some in my mouth. I love chocolate chips. Did you know? Just want to make sure I'm chewing on my chocolate. Chocolate chips were invented because someone was trying to make chocolate cookies, and they forgot to mix it and melt it into the batter, and they were kind of in a rush. So they just chopped up the chocolate and added in small pieces and thought instead of that it would disperse and melt as it went and be all chocolatey throughout the batter instead of just staying in one spot. And then this woman baked them. I know it was a woman. I can't remember her name though. They were baked, and lo and behold, the chocolate hadn't moved. It had kind of stayed where it was. And chocolate chip cookies were born because everyone's like, this is the best thing I've ever had. Because chocolate chip cookies are the perfect food. So, I have a pretty wet dough. It is going to sit for a minute. So that is to help hydrate some of that gluten. There's a little more structure without making it tough. So this is what our cookie dough looks like now. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Why don't we just chow down on this like we are teenage girls in the 90s or early 2000s kind of rom-com? Because there are a couple of reasons. First of all, people are like, oh, raw eggs. You can't eat raw eggs. True, very important. But as we talked about earlier, eggs on the inside are actually sterile. And the only germs they encounter are on the egg shell, because that is what is in contact with the cloaca, aka chicken butt. So obviously we don't want chicken butt germs in our mouth, because that is how we get sick. That's how you get salmonella. But that is actually not as much of an issue. Let's say I made it without eggs, and I'm like, sweet, I can eat this now. Wrong. Raw flour, and I mean raw, can have E. coli in it, can have lots of different bacteria just chill and hang out and be inert, only to be consumed by an unsuspecting Brianna and to give it and be added to like a nice, warm, moist environment, i.e. inside of you, and gives you a massive infection, makes you super duper sick. So you're gonna eat raw cookie dough, no eggs, and you gotta cook the flour first. Lots of instructions online. I don't really like raw cookie dough. Once I kind of found that out, I was kind of turned off it, but I know some people that do. So that's my pro tip. Don't get salmonella or E. coli. So, how are we gonna bake these bad boys today? Well, I have my good pan out, because I have guests over, and the guests are you. I have my good pan out. I got ye old Silpat mat. Again, dollar store. Keeps things from sticking. Magic. Also, to measure our cookies. Normally I use an ice cream scoop, but I can't find it for the life of me. So, I'm going to use spoons, because I do have spoons. So, I am going to take my spoon, and I'm going to gently get about 2 tablespoons worth of dough. You can make 3 tablespoons. That'll make like a pretty decent sized cookie. Kind of like the cookies if you buy them at like Subway. And I'm going to kind of form it into a loose ball. I'm going to pop it on my pan. So I'll show you with my hands what I'm doing. You can also make them smaller, but understand that when they're smaller, they're going to take less time to bake, so you really need to watch them. So if you're making them for like little kids, or for people like me who want to eat like 8 cookies in a day and not just have to eat 1 that's giant, I'd much rather have 8 small cookies than 1 giant cookie. Make a little ball like that. Plop them on our pan. I was told by someone they like the sounds I make when I plop things down, so let's do a little scoopy scoop. Scoop. Toss, 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 toss. Kind of like you're playing hot potato, hot potato, hot potato. Little round guy. Splorp. And we're just going to keep going like this. Splorp, 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 splorp. Mostly round shape. Whoops! I splorped. I splorped preemptively. Well, that's fine. It's a little off to the side of the pan, but that's fine. Again, scoop and splorp. Scoop, scoop, and splorp. Scoop, 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 scoop. Scoop and splorp. Scoop and splorp. And we'll splorp that. Let's do it. And we're just going to keep doing this until we fill up our pan. These are going to spread. Got cookie dough on my computer. These are going to spread, so you do want to give it a little bit of space, like an inch or 2 in between. But I've also made 1 giant sheet pan of cookies one time, and I just kept them into squares, and it was fine. So, you know, that's a dark secret about me. Sometimes I just don't care. So do what you will. And that's basically how we make our cookies. One thing, though, once I get this splorped up, I'm going to pop them in the oven, and then I'm going to tell you one more secret. Secret to making your cookies extra delicious. I'm going to put like 2 more in the pan. And I'll show you how I space them out on the plan, because I do think that is muy importante. Splorp, splorp, splorp. Slurp, slurp, slurp. I kind of sound like the Swedish chef. Yeah, that's pretty good. A little rinsey rants on the old hands. I'll show you the pan. Bowl can. Just like that. And this is kind of what we have. So they're kind of spaced out. It's not rocket surgery. You don't have to be super specific. But they're spaced out enough that they all have room to spread. That one's probably going to get squished. That one right there is probably going to get squished to the side. But again, we are not experts here. I am nowhere near an expert here. We are not striving for perfection. We are not serving any kind of royalty today. We just want to eat cookies. So what you're going to have after baking these for 8 to 12 minutes is some pretty baller cookies. You want to cook them until they're kind of golden on the edges and set on the sides and set in the middle. Middle is the important because that'll take longest to cook. But do keep an eye on them because they are easy to burn. So 8 to 12 minutes, then pop them out of the oven, let them cool in a rack, and just, it's key, just after you pull them out, we're going to use your secret weapon. We're going to use sea salt flakes. I like Malden. What they are, is they're little snowflakes of salt. They're basically salt from the sea that is kind of dried in a sheet and you scrape it up. And they're a little flaky and delicious. If you sprinkle that on your cookie, they look fancy. People look at it, oh, she had salt on the cookie. They look cool. I mean, again, that is going to add that extra sweetness punch by blocking the bitter compounds that may have arose. Especially if you burn anything, a little bit of salt takes the edge off. I've never done that ever. So, thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of Kitchen Chemistry. I had a blast walking you through chocolate chip cookies. I have no idea what we're going to do next week, but I'm going to post on Instagram and probably our Twitter later on so that you can see. And I'm also going to do a cute little recap because I'll be taking pictures of stuff as we go. A little walk down memory lane that's coming your way. So, thank you so much for joining me again. I hope you make some sweet cookies. I'm really excited to eat them in 8 to 12 minutes. I will burn the roof of my mouth. I will see you next Wednesday. Have a wonderful week. Love you guys. Bye-bye.